us on over to our first speaker, Som, and his speech on the product innovation landscape. So Som, if you can please turn on your webcam and present your screen, I'll turn it over to you. Hi, Som. Nice to see you.
Hi, buddy. Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. I'm Som, the co-founder and CEO of AI Palette, and today I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence and the food product innovation landscape. And during the presentation, I will talk about how the state of AI is for the food industry, and also be showing some of the companies what they are doing about AI, and also we talk about some of the key challenges that comes when it comes to implementing AI solutions for the food industry. Artificial intelligence as a topic has been there in the academia for the last 70 years, but only now in the last 20 to 30 years, in the last 2 to 3 years, we are able to see the application of AI in the commercial space. And there are two things which led to this particular change. The first one was the cost of computing came down drastically because of the advent of cloud computing, which made it easier for the artificial intelligence model to crunch all this humongous amount of data that it really needs to make good predictions. And the second factor was the abundance of data that happened in the last 3 years. The reason was that today we have huge amount of data created by the public and also by the enterprises. So this data made it possible to build AI models on top of it to solve some of the business related questions. So when you are talking about the data that is being used by the artificial intelligence model, it can broadly be divided into two types. The first one is the data which is available publicly. So this is the data which some of us are also creating each and every day. And the second type of data that is out there is the enterprise data. So this is the data which is created by the companies through the different machines they use, the way they do product innovation, and this is the data which is proprietary only to those companies. Now, if we were to look into what are the different types of solutions that are out there, it can broadly be divided again into two types. The first type are the SaaS products. So these are the softwares which you can buy as a subscription and use it for some of the different use cases that you might have when it comes to product innovation. The advantages of SaaS products are that it's very flexible. You can decide when you want to start it and when you want to end it. It has a very low cost of acquisition because the software is being sold to a lot of other companies, and thus it helps the seller of this software to really bring down the cost and make it affordable for a vast range of population. And ultimately, it's also very quick in terms of implementation because most of these solutions are plug and play, or it needs very little time in terms of training itself and getting it ready. The second type of solutions that are out there are the ones which are created by the companies in-house. So this allows them to really build a solution which is custom made for solving their business case. And also, it allows them to have real control of their data. But on the other hand, the disadvantages of this particular approach is that the data really, that the data is with them, but the cost is really, really high when it comes to creating a solution like this. And also, you need to have a in-house team which can help you with handling this amount of data. So how can AI help us in answering some of the business related questions that we see in the food industry every day? In today's world, consumer preferences are changing really, really fast. So what it means is that we should also be able to react faster to these changing needs and be able to innovate faster and get into the market quicker than before. And the second challenge is to create products which the consumers will really love. So this is the typical NPD process, which is 5 steps. And today, for the sake of the discussion, we are going to just focus on the first 3 phases of NPD process, which is understanding, ideation, and prototyping. We are not going to touch upon on scaling up and production, because this is primarily related to the operations and supply chain related activities. So let's take a look at how it helps in the understanding phase. So in this particular phase, what we really try to do is to really understand the category for which we are creating the new product, understand the trends that are out there, and also really try to understand what the consumers are wanting today. And the key objective that we try to solve with the AI solutions that are out there is the early discovery of trends. Trends which are previously difficult to identify. Using the power of AI technology, we try to discover them early so that tomorrow when they become big, we are not taken back by surprise. The second objective is to understand and monitor the consumer needs in real time as they are changing. So it could be for the trends which we know already exist, but it's very important to be on top of them to be aware if any change comes up tomorrow. And the second one is to really anticipate and understand what is going to come next so that we can be ready to take business decisions or maybe sometimes preempt and take the fast mover advantage. So what are the different types of SaaS products that are out there today which can help us to answer some of these business questions? And when it comes to SaaS products, there are broadly 2 types of solutions. The first type of solutions are the ones which do primary research, and typically the data that they collect is the survey data. So they have a broad panel of consumers with whom they can do the surveys. So one of the primary example is StreetBees, which is a Europe-based startup. What they do is, using the power of images and videos, they do analytics and can give you what are the trends happening in a category in a particular market. The other type of SaaS product is an example like Grimesh, which again does primary research. And here they use language analytics or text analytics to get an understanding of the consumer needs and trends. And the second type of companies are the ones which don't do primary research, but work on the data which is available online. One such example is Discover AI. What Discover AI does is that it takes the big data around food, but takes only a part of the data to run qualitative analysis on top of it. And the other type of company is AI Palette. So what we do at AI Palette is we take the big data around food, but the quantum of data is much, much larger, coming from different sources like social data, search data, menu data, and retail data. And from that data, we draw correlations and identify and predict trends, what is going to come next. So these are the different types of solutions that are available today in the SaaS space for understanding the consumer needs and trends. What are the products, what are the corporates doing? So if we look into the in-house solutions that are being created, there are very few examples today. The first example is what Kerry did with IBM, where they created a tool called as the Kerry Transporter, which works on the public data which is available to identify and predict the trends. And the other example is what Pepsi did in-house, was building a tool like ADA, but it is the way it is different from Kerry's Transporter is that this tool primarily works on the data that they gather from different sources, some of them coming from the SaaS solutions, some of them coming from the primary research that they are doing themselves. ADA, what it does is that it collates all this data and makes it possible to make intelligent business decisions. The reason why we see very few in-house solutions when it comes to the understanding phase is because of the following challenges. The big data is highly unstructured. It comes in multiple forms and multiple shapes and coming from too many different sources. So that's where it becomes really convenient for the companies to work with a SaaS company who has access to this kind of unstructured big data, to run the analysis and then identify and predict the trends. The second big challenge is the language. So not just English, there are data which is coming from countries where English is not really a primary language. And so you need a solution which can work on non-English languages. If you are in Asia, you need it to work on languages like Mandarin, Thai, Korean, Japanese. If you're in Europe or Latin America, you need it to work on languages like Spanish, French, and German. And the third challenge is also the margin of error. When you're working on data which is really big, there needs to be a certain margin of error to make sure that, and then that is something we in the companies need to accept, that there will always be a percentage of error coming with this sort of analysis. But the good thing is that rest 80 to 90% of it is right, and this is that we can make the business decisions. Now, after understanding, the next stage in the NPD process is ideation, where we come out with new product ideas or new product concepts. And what are some of the objectives that the companies have when it comes to looking at that sort of data? So one of the objectives that the companies look to answer is how they can do a quick validation of the concepts that they have created, because the traditional research methods can sometimes take weeks and months. So the first objective is to really get a fast validation of the different ideas and the concepts. The second is to reduce the bias, which we typically see coming from the focus groups. So having a really bias-free answer. And finally, also getting a quick and early validation when the data is, when the concept may not be fully fleshed out, but still it is in a form where we need to get a quick validation. Okay, does it make really sense to go do a complete product creation? Can we just decide based on the ideas that are out there? Now let's take a look at what type of solutions we have in the industry today. So there are many companies who are in this particular space. I am just showing a couple of examples to be representative of them. Zappy, it is a company which does screening of concepts, screening of early concepts, and screening of early packaging design. And the way they do it is, again, by primary research, running it through panel. And the type of AI that they use over here is primarily text analytics, and also a little bit of image analytics when it comes to capturing the eye movement and the hot spots. The second type of solutions that are out there are more on the basis of neuroscience. So this is where the companies really scan the brain signals and try to remove the bias when it comes to some of the responses in the consumer feedback. What is interesting here is that we don't see any of the in-house solutions being built out over here, because to build a solution like this means that the companies need to maintain a panel of respondents, which is done much better if they outsource it to a SaaS provider. So the challenges that comes with a solution like this is to make sure the quality of the respondents is right. So a lot of time what it happens is that the SaaS providers, they have a pool of panelists, and these are the same panelists to whom they are sending the same research again and again. And the quality of response that you get, this kind of respondents, may not be always high quality. The second challenge is to make sure the number of data points. So this is the challenge which is always there with any kind of primary research. The number of data points or the number of consumers that you can reach out to in any point of time is quite limited. And the third challenge is in terms of the predictive analytics. So here the solutions that we have doesn't really have a predictive element to it. It's more around analysis of the data where they use the AI solutions. So we are really waiting for a SaaS company who can really do a predictive analytics based on the concepts that are created at this particular stage of product development. Now comes the third and the final stage that we are going to talk about is the prototyping stage. So what happens at the prototyping stage is that we are really creating a prototype, a physical prototype based on the concept that has been developed in the lab. And the key objectives that we are trying to solve in this particular stage is to reduce the trial and error that typically comes when you're building and iterating a solution. So can we reduce the multiple iterations? Can we get it right the first time? The second objective is to get the sensory properties right. So when it comes to food products, taste is one of the main and key drivers even today. So can we get the sensory properties right? Using the power of artificial intelligence, can we guess the flavor profile which will be accepted by the target audience whom we are targeting at this point of time? And the final one is, can we create new formulations using the power of AI? Or if we have a new ingredient, can you use AI to predict how it will be in a new in a formulation, how it will react with other chemicals, so that we don't have to spend too much time doing the trial and error? So this is one of the most challenging piece when it comes to the application of AI, and I'll talk about it once I go through the solutions that we have in the market today. So there are a few types of SaaS products, and the number of SaaS products for this particular stage of new product development is very limited. The first types are the companies like GastroGov, who does the sensory analytics and tries to predict the right flavor profile that you want for your product. And that's when they try to create the spider chart and the web chart based on the particular type of population and the country where you are looking to launch your product. The second and the only type of, and probably the only type of company that is out there is Journey Foods. So what Journey Food does is that it really helps you in creating the recipes and also identify what is going to be the nutritional value of the new formula that you are creating based on the recipe that you have created. It also discovers new ingredients which you might want to try it out in your new product development. And we have a bunch of new companies, Turing AI and Navarasa. What they are trying to do is to really cut down the time when it comes to new product development, so that you don't need to create the recipes over and over again based on the historical data that is out there of the products that you have created. Can you create a recipe which will ensure you much more higher chances of success? But having said that, these two companies are really, really new. We really need to see whether they are able to deliver on this particular type of solution. Let's take a look at what are the corporates doing? Are they creating any in-house products for this particular and the most difficult phase? So what is interesting here is that only two companies have done something about it, and both of them come from the flavor and ingredient space. So the first one is where McCormick tied up with IBM, and they created seasoning mixes based on the data of their existing seasonings which they had created, and they trained the AI on the recipe data and asked the AI to create the new seasonings. And the other example is a very recent example where Firmenich tied up with Microsoft, and they used AI to create new flavor solutions. But when you're talking about AI creating the flavor solutions, we need to keep in mind that AI doesn't create the complete flavor solution. It only gives you suggestions. And this is that we need to really apply our idea and intelligence to really decide which flavor formulation really makes sense for us to take it further. So it's not complete AI, it's AI plus human intelligence, which you can call as the augmented intelligence. And some of the primary reasons why we see so little application of AI in this particular phase of new product development is because of the following reasons. There is a lack of standardization when it comes to the way companies store and create their recipes. So that makes it really challenging to create one particular AI model, which you can then scale across multiple types of food applications or even multiple types of companies. Even between two beverage companies, there is a huge difference in the way they create their recipes or store their recipes. That makes it very difficult to create one SaaS solution which you can scale across multiple different companies. The second challenge is the concern that a lot of time the companies have in terms of sharing their most sensitive data which is the recipes of the foods that they have out there in the market. That makes it really difficult for the SaaS companies, which are typically a startup, to come an agreement with a big corporate and create a solution around it. And the third challenge is also the quality of data. So a lot of times what happens is that the way the recipes are being stored within a particular organization may not be consistent altogether. So the quality of data becomes dubious, and that makes it really difficult to build an AI model which is able to work and give us the right predictions. So what does the future look like for us now going forward? So we are probably looking at a future where the food technologist in a company will be sitting next to a data scientist, and the data scientist will come out with the suggestion of what type of recipes that they need to create. And then the food technologist or the chef will go to their lab, use their creativity to come out the ultimate product. So we don't really see a future where everything is created using the power of AI, but it will be a peaceful coexistence where AI will help us to create the right to create the right solution and the suggestions, which then the more creative person like the chef or the food technologist or the flavorist can then use their own creativity to create the ultimate consumer winning products. And there is an interesting talk by Dr. Pete Angelin coming up tomorrow morning, where he will be talking about how AI will disrupt the food CPG industry. So this will really show what the future looks like 20 years or 30 years from now. So please don't miss that. And with that, I would love to open the